Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be checking out some of the best looking new upcoming games planned to release in 2025. While I have spent the past couple of weeks binging on Path of Exile 2, I am always looking forward to what else is on the horizon, so I've taken a little break from the grind to do exactly that. So what fun games will we get to play next year? Quite a few, it seems. Let's check some of them out. Kicking things off is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Like its predecessor, this is a story-driven, open-world, action combat role-playing game that leans heavily into delivering an authentic medieval experience with a bit of cheeky British humor in there to boot. One of the major selling points of the original was that tasks or missions can be handled in many different ways. This will be true in the sequel as well. Some lady needs your help to rescue chickens because they got stolen by some bandits. Well, you could attempt to bribe the bandits, buying her chickens back. You could sneak into their camp at night, stealing the chickens, which could result in some fighting. Or you could get chickens from elsewhere and bring those back to the lady instead. There's just tons of creative options for dealing with the many objectives that you encounter, and as you might expect, depending on the decisions you make, NPCs will react accordingly, to the point that even something as silly as bribing bandits for chickens could come back in unexpected ways 100 hours later. Combat is another big selling point of the franchise, with their aim to deliver authentic first-person melee engagements. The big standout here is a fairly in-depth directional attack and defense system, where you have to react in real-time fights to what your opponent is doing, deflecting incoming attacks from the angle of the attack, and countering whenever the opportunity arises. Just like the first one, it's said to have a visceral combat system as you engage in thrilling real-time battles, with a range of authentic weaponry and combat styles to suit your own personal play style. You'll be fighting face-to-face on foot, riding on horseback, or even sneaking up on unsuspecting foes from the shadows. The open world of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is said to be twice as large as the first game. However, it is worth noting this isn't one large, seamless connected world, but rather it's two larger, freely explorable areas with loading between them. One of the areas, Bohemian Paradise, is a cultural landscape with lots of nature, while the other one is the city of Kutna Hora, called by its German name Kutenberg in-game, and its surroundings. So you're going to be exploring bustling city streets full of NPCs, all the way to deep lush forest with hidden dangers throughout. According to the developer Warhorse Studios, the base game of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 should take most players about 80 to 100 hours to beat, excluding any of their planned DLC. This includes a total of nearly 5 hours of cutscenes in-game. They've also said there's no need for you to have played the original. It's going to be totally accessible for brand new players. Looks and sounds really fun, and people love the first game. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is set to release on February 2nd for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. Before we continue on though, let's get a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Watcher of Realms, a new next-gen fantasy RPG for PC and mobile. The game features a vast, immersive world to explore as you complete quests, meet interesting characters, and collect over 200 unique heroes to take into battle. It's got 360-degree real-time combat where you control the battlefield, deploying heroes, deciding who they attack, and unleashing powerful skills to get a strategic advantage. There's a variety of content types and game modes, including campaign questing, PvE boss encounters, and large-scale guild versus guild battles. So Watcher of Realms currently has a limited time event taking place as well, called Jingle Bells and Wukong's Spells. This Christmas, there's a brand new hero, the legendary Monkey King himself, Sun Wukong. His arrival also comes with a new event filled with strategic stages, challenging mini-games, and a Chinese-inspired map. During the event, you can earn exclusive rewards like a free Wukong skin, powerful artifacts, and expressive emotes. You can also win 70 free summons, tons of valuable items, and the new legendary hero, Callista. So if you'd like to learn more, now is a great time to dive into Watcher of Realms. Check out the link in the description below, or scan the QR code on screen to download Watcher of Realms for free on PC or mobile. All right, back into the list of games. Next up is Monster Hunter Wilds, which I can already tell you is most certainly going to be a very good game. I say this because I've already played it, getting a preview a few months back on top of the demo they released recently. And yeah, this is Monster Hunter, and it's looking pretty great. A few things worth mentioning. Combat feels as good as ever in my experience. If you're unfamiliar with the franchise, Monster Hunter is a very animation locking heavy kind of an action combat game. The whole idea is that you're meant to learn the moves and the attacks of the different monsters you're coming up against, and then using windows of opportunity as your chance to strike. They just really heavily punish frequently spamming attacks or or poor positioning or overly dodging or whatever, if you overcommit in any capacity, the monster is likely to run you over, slam you into the ground, or otherwise punish you. But the more you play, the more you learn when the right time to strike is. It can be a frustrating thing initially to come across, but it also becomes very satisfying as you progress and get better and improve and learn. One big new mechanic here in Wilds is focus mode. Now, first I wasn't sure about this feature when I was learning about it, but after trying it myself, I think it's actually pretty good. It's essentially a targeting mode that lets you directly place attacks, and this includes melee attacks. On top of that, it also reveals any weak points on any monsters you're fighting. And then besides attacking with your weapon, there's all sorts of other tools at your disposal. You've got your slinger and various ammos you can toss out, some of which can be used to damage or distract monsters. There's also other functionality. So for example, at one point I was hunting a pack of Doshiguma. There was 3 of them together. Using my slinger, I tossed out a large dung pod, which forced them to flee in different directions so I could hunt the alpha. Good way to just split up groups of enemies. There's other ways to split up packs though besides large dung pods. You've got environmental traps and obstacles like hanging rocks and vines, or while fighting in the sand dunes, for example, in the level that we've played, any big impacts that happen on those dunes will actually cause them to collapse, basically acting as a crowd control, a rooting effect. You also have things like large barrel bombs you can place down, pick up, and throw that not only deals damage, but can also knock enemies off balance. Other noteworthy features include you've got your Palico, pet companion and sidekick, who is a ton of help. They will chase monsters around as you fight them, smacking it with their weapon every so often, doing a bit of damage. But more importantly, they come with a bit of utility. If you get low on health, they will bring you healing items, and they can even lay down traps to interrupt monsters. Another big new inclusion here over Worlds is the mount system. You've got a mount that you can ride around manually as expected. It's also got an auto run feature, and it will go to any marked location or target, letting you do other things while you're traveling, including you can check your map and manage your inventory. You can pull collectibles from the environment with your slinger as you're riding by. You can also even sharpen your weapons and heal while mounted until you get to wherever you're going. And then there's some combat related benefits to the mount as well. You've got a few limited basic attacks you can do, including a dismounting strike, which seems quite effective. And you're able to swap weapons with your mount, which is ultra useful, even if it's just to have access to a ranged weapon. Beyond loads of massive monsters for you to fight, the game is going to feature the series' biggest play space to date, with huge open zones that are freely explorable and connected to other biomes and zones at several points on each map. From what I saw of the map and my time with it, the playable space is bigger than I've ever seen and completely seamless within those zones. You can actually walk straight out of camp right into a hunt. Monster Hunter Wilds is set to release on February 28th, coming to PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, and yeah, this one's almost certainly going to be really good. Arc Raiders is a PvEVP extraction game from Embark Studios. This is another one on the list that I've already had the chance to play and was quite impressed in my time with it. Just about everything from the overall gameplay and design to the visuals, animations, and performance, all of that had a high degree of quality and polish. I was really impressed, and more importantly, it was just plain old fun to play. Now, this is actually the game, if you're unaware, that was originally supposed to be like a looter shooter, sort of like a Destiny, Division, or Warframe. During development, they changed route though, and yes, now it is an extraction game. I would have liked to see the looter shooter version of this game, but an extraction game is something I'm also interested in, so let's talk a bit about what Arc Raiders currently is. So the basic structure and gameplay loop will be familiar to you if you've ever played any other extraction game. You drop in with a starting set of weapons and consumables, you scavenge around the environment looking for loot, fighting enemies, both PvE with these various types of robot drones, as well as other players, which as of now will be in group sizes of up to 3. Audio plays a major role here. Everything, your every action, movement, opening containers, attacks, everything has a distinct sound associated with it. As you play, you'll learn what all of those sounds mean, which is going to help you in tracking down players or hiding from them yourself. And if you survive and don't die and you get to extract, you keep everything you collected in the process. If you die, you drop everything but what is in your safe pocket. And then post game, you unload your winnings into a stash, you pick what you want to bring with you into the next round, and then you go again, rinse and repeat. That is the extraction survival game loop. The PvE enemies in this game are actually pretty cool. They're called Arc, and they're this rather unique robot drone mix of enemies. So you've got like tiny spiders that will jump and cling to your face, kind of CCing you for a moment. You've got these small flamethrower balls that will roll up and blast you with fire in the face. You got large spheres that'll spin at high rates of speed, charging forward and actually leaving a trail of flames in their wake. And you've got much larger, chunky, sort of tanky spiders with big lunging attacks, and they just take a lot to bring down. There's also a bunch of different flying drones with several types, each with their own function. And just by themselves, the drone enemies pose a threat, but then also when you're fighting PvE, you're creating a ton of noise, the gunfire from you shooting the drone and then them attacking back. And in most of the cases, when we were fighting PvE in our time with the game, other players would inevitably roll in because it just makes so much noise, which brings us then to the PvP. Pretty straightforward. You got other players who are in the map as well, looking around for loot. If you come across them, you're bound to end up in a fight. The game's got a down but not out mechanic that does give you a chance to revive any allies that happen to go down in firefights at medium to long range. When we tested the game, they had 3 maps available. Each were completely unique, their own handcrafted locations with distinct environments and points of interest. Really great looking as well. Speaking of which, visuals and performance, both of these were top of the line fantastic. This game just looks and runs phenomenally. Simple as. Sound design was also really good too. Quite good design, effects, audios, all of that. There's more I could say, but I'll leave it at that for this video. This game seems really good. Looking forward to playing it. I would have liked the looter shooter game variation that they were working on as well, but I like extraction games, so that's what we have. Arc Raiders is scheduled to release in 2025, coming to PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. So Hello Games is back with a brand new title called Light No Fire, but basically looks like No Man's Sky, but fantasy medieval edition, which frankly sounds pretty interesting to me. We got a few details in an early interview about the game with Sean Murray. He said that it is more ambitious than No Man's Sky, which is interesting given that they're focusing on one planet rather than an entire universe. However, while No Man's Sky is most definitely big, it's also in a lot of ways shallow, so we're hoping that their more ambitious statement means a bigger focus on a lot more detail and depth within the game space they do have. And to that point, he claimed that the game is Earth-sized, literally an entire planet that is as varied as a universe, he says, with mile-high mountains from the top of which you will see off in the distance rivers, canyons, oceans, and continents, all of which you can travel to. Sean referred to Light No Fire as, quote, the first real open world, something without boundaries, which to me says obviously no loading screens while you explore. Not surprising. That was the case in No Man's Sky. We're gonna, quote, let everyone play together, which alludes to, at the very least, a shared world game where you will see other players running around, although multiplayer claims pre-release for their upcoming games. Bit of a dubious topic when it comes to Hello Games, so we'll have to see how that pans out here with their new title. And they've also said that they want to bring the depth of role-playing games to the freedom of survival sandbox with Light No Fire, while the focus of the reveal of the game centered on the scope of their generated planet. The final game, they say, will have the tentpoles of RPGs, from character creation through to a sprawling fantasy story. You'll be able to create a custom avatar in a range of species, including human, rabbit, fox, badger, bear, wolf, and otter, and you should expect to encounter some things like small outposts with characters to meet, just like in No Man's Sky, who will hand out quests, as well as plenty of combat and engagements in enemy encampments out there as well. No Man's Sky had a notoriously rough start, that is for sure, but they have since made up for it without question over the past 7 years with 100% entirely free updates post-launch, and quite a lot of them, and quite substantial ones as well. That game just keeps on getting better, and from what little we have seen of their next title, I am pretty hopeful. Light No Fire is scheduled to release in 2025. I suspect we'll probably be seeing more of the game sometime soon. I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more as of yet, but regardless. Next up, State of Decay. This is one of my all-time favorite zombie survival series, and the 3rd installment is set to release next year. I can't wait. This is an open-world survival game set years after a zombie apocalypse nearly wiped out humankind. There's an evolving zombie threat taking over the landscape, and you need to carve out a life for your community of survivalist homesteaders. Sounds kind of funny, but the thing is, beyond scavenging for resources and fighting off zombies, a lot of State of Decay is about managing your base, helping your survivors, making sure they rest up and recoup if they've had any trouble, doing quests for them, and basically you're effectively building up a survival colony in a post-apocalyptic world. The choices you make will affect in-game events and storylines. As an example, if one of your community members happens to fall to the zombie hordes, you will lose that character and their abilities forever. You might even then come up against them the next time you're venturing out into the wilderness. The game will include online multiplayer for up to 4 players. You start a community from scratch with your friends in a shared, persistent world where you'll be able to build, develop, and expand a base that fulfills your needs and best helps you and your clan mates survive. One interesting additional twist is that this will be the first game in the series to feature undead animals, with deer, wolf, and bears, on top of all of the undead humans and any mutant variations of those. There was a trailer a few months ago which showcased a few things that I want to mention. Various weapon types. We saw shotguns, handguns, crossbows, scoped bolt action rifles, as well as some melee options like baseball bats, machetes, and just using your hands. Different enemy types with destructible body parts. Kind of hard to tell, but we saw at least a few variations of normal zombies with some glowing zombies and then big guys in there as well. These were also in previous games, but it looks like they're expanding these. Vehicles will be returning, as well as with the game getting a dynamic weather system. All of that is well and good. My biggest hope for the sequel, though, is that they address the multiplayer tethering, where your co-op buddies couldn't stray too far from the host. That aside, though, I love the first two, cannot wait for the third. State of Decay 3 is set to release in 2025 for PC and Xbox. The next installment of Doom comes out next year. Doom: The Dark Ages is a single-player action FPS prequel to the critically acclaimed Doom reboot in 2016, along with Doom Eternal. You play as, of course, the Doom Slayer, a legendary demon-killing warrior fighting endlessly against the hordes of hell. So tonally, The Dark Ages seems similar to previous entries in the series. We have a story about how the Doomslayer is this like weapon of the gods out there to smite the forces of hell, coupled with some really intense metal music underscoring all of the gameplay and some over-the-top action. Although I do want to add here, the soundtrack isn't from Mick Gordon this time around, as the composer had this public falling out with Marty Stratton, the director of id. That drama aside, there's going to be new music in this one, but from what we saw in the preview, it sounds good, so I'm fine with it. For the Dark Ages, they are looking to rein back the pacing a little bit compared to the amped up version that we got with Eternal. Things should be a tad more methodical, slower pace with a bit of that medieval fantasy theming throughout with the weaponry and the enemies. There is going to be a dragon in the game after all. Some of the weapons we've seen already include the super shotgun, a Gatling gun that grinds skulls into shards before spitting them out, and the new chain shield, which this is really cool. It's got a few interesting things to it. It can be flung out like a boomerang, or it can be slammed into the ground to create a shockwave. You can also use it to deflect bullets and parry attacks. Looks cool. I mean, little else is really known about this game at this point, but hey, we know Doom, we know Doom Eternal. Those are both super fun to play. I'm assuming this is going to be as well. The setting looks cool, the theming looks cool. This one, it looks cool, looks good. Can't wait. Doom of the Dark Ages, set to launch in 2025 for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. Dune Awakening. This is the survival sandbox crafting MMO from Funcom. In a lot of ways, this looks to be an evolution, improvement, and advancement on all the work that they've done over the years with Conan Exiles, taken to the next level, and of course in the Dune setting and on the Dune planet. Here's some of what we know from several previews of the game that we've seen and seen videos and stuff of. So you got character creation, you can make your own character, a fair bit of customization here, but probably most importantly of all, you start off by picking your mentor, which is like your starting class, choosing between a Swordmaster, Bene Gesserit, Mentat, and Trooper, which determines your starting abilities, but later down the road you can specialize however you like, grabbing skills and weapons from whatever of the classes. You got a tutorial that's going to teach you all the basics of movement, combat, and survival. Helped greatly after you gain access to the Frem Kit, which really is like your on-the-go crafting survival toolkit. It's a backpack and field kit more or less after gathering basic resources. Lets you make the starter weapons, tools, and consumables. There's a lot of survival crafting stuff in here. You're gonna walk around the sands. You can't spend too much time on it because that'll call the worms. You gotta stay out of the heat and avoid dehydration and sunstroke. There are even pockets of the world where heavy amounts of spice are in the air, and if you spend too much time there, it's basically gonna knock you out. There's an interactive harvesting system, which is actually a nice little touch. They have the basic harvesting of items, where you just pick up something, but there's more advanced versions for larger resource nodes like scrap metal, where you've got a mini game where you have to cut using a ray to trace along the angle of a shape. Doing so is basically just going to grant you extra resources. In terms of combat, it's third person, melee, and ranged. We've seen several sequences of combat. We got examples of characters climbing around the environment, going high above the base. They got a free climbing system where as long as you have the stamina, you can climb anywhere. And then there's actually a bunch of other maneuverability stuff with grapple hooks and suspensor belts. You can propel yourself up and then glide on down. And then once you get into the combat, the melee and range combat, they don't look that great from what we saw in early previews, but we have also heard that the iterations that they had available for those early gameplay showcases are the very early versions, and they're going to continue to be getting a lot of work. So hopefully this is one area that they really hone in, fine tune, and polish before the game officially releases. Other than that though, this is an open world survival crafting MMO, which comes with a lot of what you expect with it. Big open spaces, lots of different points of interest. You're going to be coming across other players. There's a whole end game zone called the Deep Desert, which is entirely 100% PvP, and that is where in the end game people are going to focus on harvesting spice, which is like your most valuable currency and resource, used for progression, used for trading, used for fuel and crafting, used for a lot of things. But while you're out there, there are going to be guilds fighting over dominance of the spice blows, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But even prior to the end game, they've said there's something like like 50 to 60 hours of content leading up before you even get to the full open PvP zone. So really interesting. We'll see. Dune Awakening is set to release in 2025 for PC, PlayStation, Xbox. I do know they've got some testing actually currently going on as well. All right, so those are a bulk of the main games like I'm most excited for, but there's quite a few honorable mentions that I'm also interested in. Atomfall is an upcoming action survival game developed and published by Rebellion. This is set in an alternate history 1960s version of the town of Windscale, where the nuclear disaster that took over northern England created this radioactive quarantine zone. Combat in the game can be approached in a lot of different ways. There are guns and other ranged weapons, as well as options to melee with the use of brawling. There's also this heart rate system in the game. Stealth tactics can be used as well. The game is apparently can be completed without killing any enemies whatsoever, just knocking some out. In terms of the map and exploration, you will be going around the British countryside of the Lake District in a series of interconnected areas which can be freely explored. Players will interact with NPCs and select dialogue options as responses. You'll be able to acquire leads to find out new objectives, the locations, and loot can be found, pursuing those objectives in any order that you please. It's basically just like a big sandbox for you to play in. The heart rate system, this is kind of interesting. This is like a survival game mechanic. You have to manage your character's health and heart rate constantly. Doing things like fighting combat, sprinting, and kicking enemies increase your heart rate, resulted in darkened vision and muffled hearing. That's kind of interesting. And there's going to be crafting. You collect various resources and scraps to craft weapons or use firearms to defeat enemies, although ammunition is said to be pretty scarce. Rebellion is probably best known for their Sniper Elite franchise, which I've said before is a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. I've played pretty much every single one of these and really like them. So I'm hoping this brand new IP, they deliver something that's engaging for me as well. Atomfall set to release on March 27th for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. What if you took the World of Warcraft's dungeons and spun it off into its very own entirely separate game? I'd like to introduce you to Fellowship, which is a new game attempting to do exactly that. This is a multiplayer online dungeon adventure game, or MODA as they're calling it, set in a new fantasy setting with endless scaling dungeon runs being what you're going for. Players will focus on working together as a team with an emphasis on skill, cooperation, and strategy to defeat bosses, collect loot, and work together to overcome the ever-present challenges. The game will feature the holy trinity of tank, healer, and damage dealer as you're taking on the hordes of enemies and imposing bosses. So the game is going to feature 4-player co-op multiplayer set in a rich fantasy world that's all about dungeon diving. You're going to switch between a large pool of tank, healer, and DPS roles with unique kits to build the perfect balance for your team. They say that every run is going to feel like a brand new challenge, with dungeons that get more difficult as players progress and level up. You will never out-level the game thanks to seasonal updates, dungeon modifiers, new features, and rewards that keep each run fresh and exciting, adding another layer of replayability. Every boss has their own unique and varied mechanics. Enemy skills grow as the difficulty increases, and additional modifiers continue to challenge players as they grow and improve. I also believe, unfortunately, they're going with like set character classes. So like there are healers that are just like set characters. You're not making your own character, you're picking the healer, and the healer is this character. I'm assuming customization might be through like skill modification and maybe gear and stuff like that. I'm actually not entirely sure at the moment, although I do think that there is some testing taking place early next year, so I'm hoping to get into that. Fellowship looks interesting. I like dungeon runs in MMOs. I'm interested in the concept of a game that is entirely that. Fellowship set to release at some point 2025. Hey, Gears of War is back, hoping to cash in on some nostalgia here with Eday. Set 14 years before the original Gears of War, the heroes Marcus and Dom return home to face a new nightmare, the Locust Hordes. In Gears of War Eday, Eday standing for Emergence Day, if you're not up with the Gears of War lingo, subterranean monsters, grotesque and relentless, have erupted from below, laying siege to humanity. You were there where it all started. Now, we haven't seen any gameplay footage as of yet. We do know that this upcoming third-person shooter will be slightly different from recent titles in the series, as they're going back to emphasis on horror aspects in some ways, going back to the roots of the series, as confirmed by creative director Matt Searcy during an interview with IGN, where he said, "We looked back at what people felt like when they played Gears of War, or any of the Gears 4 included, but when people tell you what they remember playing, the things that stood out to them, the feelings, a lot of it is about these kind of dark, almost horror-esque scary moments, and apparently that is something they're looking to bring back. Beyond that fact, this is being made on Unreal Engine 5. It looks good from the trailer, I guess. That's about all we know for now, but hey, it is Gears of War. Pretty confident in what we're expecting to get out of this. I'm just mainly hoping that the Horde mode is fun and fleshed out. Gears of War Eday is set to release in 2025 for PC and Xbox. Crimson Desert, an upcoming action-adventure game developed and published by Pearl Abyss. This was originally planned as a prequel for Black Desert Online, but during development, the game eventually transformed into something else entirely. It is now a single-player title set in the same universe. In December 2020, after release of the first trailer to the Game Awards, Pearl Abyss released a commentary video that explained their vision for it. The game's going to be using an upgraded version of Black Desert's proprietary engine called Black Space, and yeah, you can see some of that influence here. Beyond that, this is a large open-world medieval fantasy game. You got diverse biomes, points of interest, cities, towns, ruins, and dungeons to explore. There's going to be tons of quests given via NPCs in need of help. You'll find strongholds full of enemies. There will be boss battles and a combat system that looks to be a mix of like action combat, Black Desert-y with some wrestling and grapple moves in it. Pretty flashy stuff. Looks really good. Crimson Desert is scheduled to release for PC, PlayStation, Xbox in the second quarter of 2025. On top of all of those, we also have a handful of games recently revealed at the Game Awards, and we don't know much of anything about any of these yet, but nevertheless, they are big enough and look interesting enough that I wanted to include them here. First up is Elden Ring Nightreign. This is a standalone adventure said to be within the Elden Ring and Dark Souls universe, apparently, crafted to bring a new experience to fans of the series. You'll be joining forces with other players to take on the creeping night and the dangers within, featuring 3-player co-op, uniquely skilled champions, and relentless threats. Now, what's interesting from what I've heard is that you're actually like not making your own character like in Dark Souls and just like freely customizing it as you go and as you find new weapons and skills and spells and gear and all that, but you're actually picking from predetermined characters with their own set play styles, and the game is either going to be playable completely solo or in groups of 3, but not duos. For whatever reason, they're 1 or 3. If it's just you and a mate who want to play together, you're out of luck, bro. Next up, we got The Witcher 4, an upcoming single-player open-world RPG from CD Projekt Red, the creators of Cyberpunk, and more importantly, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The beginning of a new saga here, and the follow-up to what's likely one of the most acclaimed RPGs ever. This one with Ciri taking center stage as the protagonist. Looks cool from the trailer. Ciri's a cool character. The trailer looked good. That's about all we know. Like I said, we don't know much about any of these games. They were like just literally revealed. Speaking of which, another one is Slay the Spire 2. This is a deck building roguelike. The original game was fantastic. I was addicted as hell. I think I've got like 200 hours in this game. It's crazy. This looks to be all of that, but improved with better visuals, more cards, more enemies, more of everything, more features, more content. Cannot wait. If you haven't played the first Slay the Spire, I'm sure you can get it for pretty cheap. A really good game. Or wait for Slay the Spire 2 because it looks like all of that, but better. Following the phenomenal success of Space Marine 2, Saber Interactive is cooking up something else for us this time. A Turok reboot? Yes, the dinosaur sci-fi Aztec hunting game from way back in the day. Origins, as it's titled, is the series' first installment in many, many, many years, and man, am I pumped. I think the last Turok game that I played was literally in the mid-90s, so this is a throwback. It's gonna be like time traveling jumping into this. And again, off the back of Space Marine 2, right now, Saber can do no wrong for me. Like, I'm really hopeful they take all of the good things from that and bring it to the Turok franchise. I'm down, right? And then lastly, we got Intergalactic. This is the next title from acclaimed studio Naughty Dog, said to be an action-adventure set 1,000 years in the future, starring a lady who's carrying around this like audio-fueled red glowing sword, fighting big bad guys and traveling through space, taking on the oppressive regime. I don't know. Looks kind of cool from the trailer. We'll see. A lot of hubbub about this game right now, but I mean, if the gameplay is good, if it's whatever, that's what I'm interested in, so we'll see what happens. And that pretty much does it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Just a look at some of the upcoming new games planned for 2025 that I am most interested in. Gonna be plenty more coming out throughout the year that I'm also probably going to be interested in and want to play, but I just wanted to put something for you all together to get excited. We're ringing in the new year. Holiday season's coming up. It's time to look forward to what's ahead, and yeah, some good looking stuff ahead. In the meantime, I'm probably just going to still be playing Path of Exile 2. I still haven't even made like a new character. I'm still going through the end game with my witch. I think I hit like level 93 or something. I'm trying to get good gear, but I'm not trading, so it's kind of a ball ache. That's another story. That's it for today's list. Thank you for joining me. Hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one, all right? Take it easy.